Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And
Bye-bye.
for those who are attending, just a quick reminder, we will be making recordings of the sessions available at the end of the webinar. We also have a quick poll. If you don't mind paying attention to your screen right now, we would love your feedback about Mr. Rubin's presentation and your feedback on the poll that's being presented on the screen. So thank you for those who are participating and attending from around the world. We just really appreciate your feedback. And now, Dr. Keith Folse, I see that you are online. How are you today, sir?
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound excellent. Good morning to you, good afternoon to me, and good evening to some others.
That about sums it up. You've hit the whole clock, I'm afraid.
Exactly, all over the world.
Yes.
If you'd like to share your screen, I'm going to give a brief introduction.
Sure. There we go.
The English Language Center at the University of Bahrain is delighted to feature Dr. Keith Folse, who is a professor of TESOL at the University of Central Florida. He has taught in the undergraduate TEFL program, the Master's in TESOL program, and the PhD in TESOL program. Dr. Keith has taught English, including writing, to non-native speakers for more than 40 years in the United States, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Malaysia, and Japan. In today's talk, he will touch upon his varied experiences in discussing the role of authentic materials in teaching writing. Dr. Folse will also make reference to his most recent classroom experience as a student in a university class for beginning German, which was completely online. An avid language learner, Dr. Folse has also studied French, Spanish, Arabic, Malay, Japanese, and now German. Dr. Folse has written 78 books, including the 6 books in the Great Writing series by National Geographic Learning, which the University of Bahrain is honored to use in our orientation program. So we are absolutely delighted to have you here today as our final presenter, keynote speaker for the day. And his presentation is entitled, "Are our writing assignments authentic or useful?" So Dr. Keith, I give you the floor, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Well, I'm going to say good morning, a very early morning here from Florida, where we have the last part of a small hurricane. Welcome to Florida. So if you hear the rain outside or the wind, that's what's happening. This is not part of our usual weather. Normally I would have lots of sunlight coming into my office. No sun today, or very, very little sun there. So thank you very much for that, for the introduction. I'm going to jump right in. We have a relatively short time today. I want to focus, I want to emphasize that on the first screen here, you see my Gmail address at the bottom. If anybody has any questions about the materials I talk about today, the PowerPoint or additional PowerPoints that you might want me to share with you, or if you have any questions about teaching writing, teaching grammar, teaching vocabulary, feel free to write me at that Gmail address. All right. So big thanks today to the ELC here, or there, I should say, the University of Bahrain. Thank you so much for having me here today, for the invitation. Also, thanks to National Geographic Learning, especially Mr. Hakan Ayaz, who is the sales manager for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and for Bahrain. So you guys at the UAB probably know Hakan very well. I speak on behalf of National Geographic Learning, I think, when I say thank you so much for this invitation today. So let me jump in by, who am I and what's my relationship to this topic today? So I have taught in a lot of places. I'm old. I've taught for 40 plus years now. I've taught English in English speaking countries. I've taught English in non-English speaking countries, ESL, EFL. I've taught as young, I should say, as second grade, 7-year-olds. I've taught 70-year-olds in Japan who just wanted English conversation skills. I've taught lots of different people, lots of different skills. And so today's talk is going to focus on writing, whether you're trying to improve your writing because you want to do better in your own classwork, in other words, English for academic purposes, or whether you're trying to have better writing because you're about to graduate from the university, from your college, and you're going to be in the workforce. So in the workforce, what kind of writing might you need? And the answer to both of those questions are what drives this presentation today. So I'm not writing to practice articles. I'm not writing to practice a grammar point. I'm not writing to practice 5 new vocabulary words. Those could be a good task, depending on the learner. But I think anytime we want to talk about teaching, whatever it is, teaching speaking, reading, writing, vocabulary, we're not teaching a wall. We're not teaching a house. We're teaching real human beings who have real needs. And I think that if I'm speaking today to 200 different people, 200 people have 200 different sets of students, and no one knows your students better than you do. So I hope that when you listen to today's presentation, you're able to take away some ideas that might work in your particular writing environment. So I've taught, the yellow box, I've taught all over the place, lots of different students. What's really important, I think, that makes me different from a lot of other speakers perhaps is not that I'm bilingual, not that I was born in Colombia and one parent spoke English and one parent spoke Spanish, and so I became a bilingual. The students I work with trying to teach them English, they're not bilinguals in that natural sense. They're people who speak one language or 2 languages, and they're trying to get an additional language. That additional language is not spoken in their home area, in an English as a foreign language context, for example, and they really are trying to pick up this new language. So I've studied lots of different languages. I don't speak Arabic anymore. What's that? Is that last Atia, Al Arabiya? Nope, can't do that, yeah. I can't. When I was in Saudi many years ago, my Arabic was functional. Still can read words and things like that. But it takes me 5 minutes to read a word. What's the value of reading if it takes you 5 minutes to decode it letter by letter? So my Arabic's really not very good anymore. My Malay is also pretty much gone. Japanese, I taught in Japan 6 years, and so that Japanese is still very much there. That was my most recent complete language. But I started studying German in August. So we are now in week 10 of my university course. Very interesting. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a second. I learned a lot about what it's like not just to be a teacher in an online language course, but what it's like to be a student, a learner in an online language course. A lot of shocking things that I never would have guessed as a teacher were happening in this learning situation. So when we have time for questions and answers, I really would appreciate not only questions about teaching writing or teaching English, but also any questions you might have for me in terms of being a language learner in an online course. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. So here we are, my German class. So I signed up for a German class in August. So we've got August, end of August to September, October, here we are November. It's been about 2.5 months. As I said, we're at the end of week 10. Sorry, we're in week 11 now. Sorry, we're in the second day of week 11. And what's different? Well, this class was online. I'm at the University of Central Florida, which is the largest or second largest or third largest university in the United States in terms of student numbers. We have 62,000 students. Think about that for a minute, 62000, 62,000 students. Many universities here in the United States were afraid that COVID was going to cause a decrease in enrollment. In fact, the opposite has happened. Numbers are up. More people are taking classes, especially as courses have moved online. My university always had online classes. Now we have more. So I signed up for German and everything was fine. It said that there was a Zoom meeting. Well, it turns out my university German class, it's 4 hours a week. That's what the catalog says, but we don't have any hours per week. The class has 0 hours with a teacher, 0. Not 1, not 2, not 0. It's me, a book, and the computer screen. So actually, right now, how much German do you hear? That's how much German I hear when I'm when I'm in my German class. So learning a language requires interaction. I'm an experienced language learner, so I'm learning German. I'm trying really hard. I've had to do some extra things though to compensate for not having a German teacher there. Now, the course has a teacher, obviously, and I can go to office hours, but I'm not going to go to office hours and ask her to teach me the lesson. That's not her job. So what's this class like? It's online. There's no Zoom. I don't know why. Other classes, some of the French classes, some of the Spanish classes have a Zoom component, like we're doing right now, but all of the German classes, both professors of 8 sections have decided that they're not doing Zoom. So there's no teacher instruction, which means as an experienced language learner, I don't hear a teacher voice. for example, should I say this word or this word? In English, make or do, make or do. Well, if you're a student and you're in my class, you should be able to play, you know, the audio in your head of Keith Folse saying, we use make with things that you're creating, and we use do with work. For example, do your work, do your job, do your homework, but we make a sandwich because sandwich is not a job, right? I mean, my students can hear my voice. They've seen me on the second side, what I call no interactive teaching. What I mean is, can you hear in your head the teacher voice saying, oh, okay, over here, everybody, look at this chart on page 99. You see these verbs, these 7 verbs are different. Or verbs that end in nd, for example, send, in the past tense are not sended, they're sent. So end, like send, sent, bend, bent, lend, lent. So maybe the student can hear or remember hearing me say that. I don't have that benefit at all. There is no teacher voice in my head. In fact, we have had 3 exams so far. Now, one very interesting thing about the exams online is that when you finish the exam and the teacher returns the exam to you or opens the exam results, I can click on the exam and my teacher can leave a recording. And I remember, well, those who studied a little bit about German, there are 3 words for the, der, die, das. I have a hard time remembering, is this a der word, a die word, or a das word? It's just hard for me to remember. And I made a mistake on the exam, and the teacher said, Keith, words that end in ung are going to be feminine. That is the only teacher message in my head for now 11 weeks. It's very difficult to do that. There are no students. Who are the students in this class? I don't know who the students are. Sometimes we have to make a video using Flipgrid. Some of you may know that one. So Flipgrid is a free app, a free platform. And so sometimes we have to make a video of ourselves saying 3 sentences. Describe your family. My name is Keith. I have a small family. We don't have any children. Something like that. 3 little sentences. And when we can also watch the other students' videos, that's the only time I see people. So for example, I say here, who can I practice with? I would love to have a study group with somebody. But number 1, who are my classmates? I have no idea. And number 2, who are the good classmates? I'm a serious student here. I'm old, I'm serious. I don't want to study with somebody who doesn't want to study. I don't want to study with somebody who didn't open the book. So it's a hard thing for me to do. And then in terms of writing, what am I doing in writing in German? Very little from the course. Very, very little from the course. All right, so what are authentic tasks? 10 people will have 10 different definitions. Here I have a very good definition from the British Council, I think. An authentic task is a task that speakers of a language would do in everyday life. It's real. When learners do an authentic task, they are doing something that puts real communicative demands on them. So one example might be the learners in a speaking class. The learners, you're in Bahrain, and suppose that you're going to have an exchange program and 5 students from Florida, from my state in the United States, are going to go to the University of Bahrain, and they're going to live there and study there for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it is. And your students need to, I don't know, prepare a PowerPoint orientation with 10 slides, things you should know about Bahrain before you arrive. You know, things you should not do in Bahrain, things you have to do in Bahrain, something like that, and limit it to 10 slides or 6 slides, something very specific so students don't go crazy. And then this would be a presentation that these students would watch in theory. That would be an example of an authentic task. So the task is not, let's practice present perfect. I have nothing against practicing grammar, nothing against practicing vocabulary, but sometimes an authentic task can have some benefits. And what are some advantages and disadvantages to authentic tasks? Well, an authentic task, this is from a student point of view. I've been teaching for a long time, and my students, number 1, my students tell me things like, okay, Folse, this is very interesting, but we want to learn real English. And I'm thinking, what do you mean real English? I'm teaching you real English. No, the students want real English. They want something that doesn't look like a grammar exercise. Now, I'm not anti-grammar. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not against grammar, vocabulary, teaching of those specific skills. But sometimes students want something that looks real, authentic. Number two, when it looks real, sometimes students have higher motivation. And I can see this happening. Yes, in my German class, if they gave me a form or they gave me a supermarket advertisement and it's really written in German with all the pictures and everything's in German, I would think, oh my gosh, this is real. And then I might think something of number four, authentic tasks may let students see how good their English really is, or in my case, German. If I saw a newspaper, an advertisement for a supermarket or something in German, and it looked real, and I could do 90% of that, I would feel more motivated maybe. I would think, wow, I'm doing pretty well here, right? And number three, you might say, well, I don't have time to try to find some of these authentic tasks. So what you could do is let your students try to find some of these tasks. So, I wrote in the parentheses, by asking students in businesses. So suppose your students are not trying to learn English to get to do well in a history class or a science class or another academic class, but instead your students are about to graduate and they're all going to become, I don't know, airline pilots, or they're going to be working in a bank office. So something in that new job will happen in English. What will it be? Well, I could try to find some of these things myself because I'm the teacher, but I also could let the students do that. So something you could ask your students is, in your future job, whatever that could be, 20 students will have 20 different jobs. Whatever you're trying to do in English, find something real. Not me, you find it, because nobody knows your needs better than you do. And copy it, send it to me, and then I'll take those things into account and I'll try to pick something. If 20 people sent me 20 things, I'll try to choose something that my students have sent me. If you do number three, it saves you time, and also students will then feel more invested, more interested in the class because they've helped choose the materials. All right, so those are four possible advantages, and there are many others, of course. What are some disadvantages? Well, I'm in the German class now, and when I get a newspaper article in German, and I think, wow, in the title, I can understand 2 words. But the other 9 words, I have no clue what's happening there, right? So students can be frustrated by seeing all of this real English. One of the advantages of real language, a real task, is it's real. And one of the disadvantages is also that it's real. And when it's real, number 2 may happen. Students may need language that they don't have yet. Well, you could say, well, there's just so much language on the page, it's overwhelming to my students. But also, what happens is, when students don't know something, this creates a need to know. Now, of course, sometimes as teachers, we will say, this is on the test. You try to scare students into paying attention, right? TOEFL, this is on TOEFL, this is on IELTS. Sometimes that gets everybody's attention really quickly. But instead of doing that all the time, if you have a real task and it's something that students really, really want to do, then they might be more motivated and they might think, gee, these other words I don't know. Number 1, it can be frustrating, but number 2, at the same time, it can also be motivating. And then number 3, when you get something real, the 20 students found 20 different tasks, right? Then you may get sometimes information or a subject matter that you don't want to discuss in class. For example, it might be about divorce rates, or it might be about drug abuse, or some topic that I don't want to talk about in class, or that I can't talk about in my setting. Again, we have over 100 teachers here today with 100 different situations, and some countries, certain topics are not possible there. So pros and cons. I like using a real task. I don't have a class that does all real tasks, but I think bringing a real task in sometime is important. And here are some examples of some of the tasks that I might use. Example 1, preparing a PowerPoint presentation. Have the students prepare a PowerPoint presentation. So you prepare it, but be specific. It isn't for 20 minutes. I would say you're going to do a presentation and you can only do 7 slides. Make some strange number like 7 or 9, but be very specific, and that makes students rethink how they're going to present things. And then have the students give the PowerPoint presentations. I've had so many presentations where students have the screen full of words, way too many words, and then they stand and they read the whole thing. Or when they're doing the presentation live before COVID, when we're in a room with everybody, I don't see my student, I see the back of their head. Why? They turn their head and they read the screen. And that really frustrates the audience. It frustrates me when I'm a teacher and I go to a presentation and the person just reads the screen, the whole screen, every single word. Well, there are some other examples here. They could write an essay. That's certainly a very common task in a writing class. They could write short messages in the chat box. So now number 4 is a new thing for COVID. In COVID, as you guys are today, people are writing things in the chat, people are submitting Q&A. So I don't need to write a whole paragraph in an online class, but I need to be able to write a question, and pretty quickly sometimes. And then number 5 might be answering emails if they're going to be in a new business. So you're going to have a job at the bank, and your job is going to be to communicate with the clients in Germany, in England, in Australia, in France, because English is sort of the international language with those countries I've mentioned so far. So whether you're speaking to another non-native speaker, a Bahraini speaking to somebody from France, two non-native speakers, or you're speaking with a native speaker, the conversation might be in English. So what would that email look like? Anything you can do of these 5 is going to be an authentic task depending on the purpose of the student. So I'm going to give you one from a writing class. Today's topic is about writing and writing a definition paragraph. Now, you might think, writing a definition paragraph, is that an authentic task? Yes and no. If the only purpose is for you of writing a definition paragraph and your students think, oh, I'm just going to practice my English some more on paper, then that's not an authentic writing task. It's a good task. In my German class, one of my #1, well, not just German, all my languages, one of my #1 strategies is I talk to myself. I and me have great conversations, okay? We are a good team. So whenever I learn a new word in Arabic, whenever I learn a new word in German, and the teacher explains it, or the textbook, or the dictionary, I always stop and I say, oh, this is how you say the word eraser, like the eraser on a pencil. This is how you say eraser. Or this is how you say the mouse for the computer, right? Oh, that's how you say mouse in German. Okay, all right. So I stop and ask myself, if I want to use that word mouse in German, well, who would I be using it with? What will I do with that word? So every time I learn a new word in any new language, I always, before I open my mouth and really practice out loud, I always in my head try to make an example. I tried to speak German. It's not speaking German, it's making a sentence in German. It probably is not correct because the der, die, das is not correct. It's probably not correct, but the purpose of my making that sentence was not to produce a correct sentence, it was to practice that word. Your students are Arabic speakers for many of you today. So if the new word is mouse and you don't know how to say the rest of the sentence in English, it's okay for me as a vocabulary person, it's okay to make a sentence in Arabic except for the word mouse. Put the word mouse in the Arabic sentence. The first step is to know what mouse means, or what eraser means, or what the word paragraph means, or definition means, right? So that's one step. So how could a definition paragraph be an authentic task? Many students where I teach, my students in the English class are trying to enter a US university class. That class will be taught in English. They'll be in the history class, the science class, the biology class, whatever the class is. And in that class, that professor, that instructor doesn't teach English. That professor teaches biology, teaches history. That person has no idea about verb tenses, etc. So my students have to be able to function. And if you're in the history class and they ask you to write an essay about how the war began, you might want to write one paragraph where you talk about one concept, right? So for example, the concept of today is a fair treaty, T-R-E-A-T-Y, a fair treaty. What is a fair treaty? Well, paragraph number 3 of my 8-paragraph essay might be defining that term. So writing a definition paragraph can be an authentic task. And I'm going to do one. Sorry, one of the pictures is not very clear. So in Bahrain, you're in between lunch and dinner, right? Here, breakfast just passed, unfortunately, but lunch will be coming soon. And how about eating something called gumbo? Now, I don't know how many of you know what gumbo is. So in the chat group, if you just type, do you know what this is? Without Googling it, how many people know what gumbo is? Well, I'm from the United States, and I'm from a state called Louisiana. And in Louisiana, we cook something called gumbo. And the picture on the left is a better example of what gumbo is, actually. So gumbo is this. So the dictionary definition of gumbo does not make gumbo sound as delicious as it really is. The dictionary defines gumbo as a, quote from the dictionary, thick soup made in South Louisiana. However, anyone who has tasted this delicious dish knows that this definition is too bland. This is from one of my books, Great Writing, Book 2, the National Geographic Learning Writing Series. And the words that are in bold are the words that have, they're vocabulary words that will be defined at the end of the paragraph. I don't have them on the screen here, but it's too bland to describe gumbo. It is true that gumbo is a thick soup, but it is much more than that. Gumbo, one of the most popular of all Cajun dishes, there's an explanation of Cajun, is made with different kinds of seafood or meat mixed with vegetables such as green peppers and onions. For example, seafood gumbo, that's my favorite. Seafood gumbo contains shrimp and crab. Other kinds of gumbo include chicken, sausage, or turkey. Regardless of the ingredients in gumbo, this regional dish is very delicious. That's your paragraph. So we have people do a lot of reading in a writing class. Why? Well, you think, well, how is reading an authentic task for writing? People write about what they've read. So if you're in an academic setting, in the history class, the professor doesn't care about your ideas before you took the class. The professor cares about your ideas after you've been in the class, after you've heard the lecture, after you've read the book, after you've read the books, plural. So you have to read in order to write. So Great Writing, the whole series is full of really good examples. But then what would an actual authentic writing task look like? You might say, well, now we're going to have you write a definition paragraph. Whoa. Yes, step 10, but step 1 is just going to be something simple, as in write one sentence in your own words that defines gumbo. Begin your sentence like this: gumbo is, and there is no sentence from this paragraph that you can take the whole sentence and have a correct answer. It's not like that. So you will have to do something, some mixing of the words together. And that's what writing is. It's composing, not just writing with a pencil or a pen or with your computer. It's actually composing the words together in a sentence there. That's one example of that. But I want to give you another example. So the example I just gave about gumbo, I'm going to say this is at the intermediate level, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. Again, 200 people have 200 different definitions of what intermediate is. But I want to show you an example we can do with a lower level. And I'm going to ask you to participate here, all right? So I'm not sure if people can type in the chat group right now or not. So can people type in the chat group with me?
Yes, absolutely, they can.
Okay.
We already have a few questions.
Great, thanks. So here's what we got. I'm going to give you something to write in a moment. We're going to let you guys write. Now, obviously, in a real class, I wouldn't have 113 people, 200 people. So what I would do is this: if I had a large group like this, I would say, okay, right now, if your birthday is in January and February, you write number 1. Everybody else, just read. If your birthday is March and April, you write number 2. Everybody else, just read. And that way we could share the screen a little bit, because if not, we're going to have 100 people writing. So here's what I want to do. I want to do something for writing with the lower level students, but I have to have a focus on something with language, right? I want to give you a real task. You're gonna really do something, but teacher to teacher, the students don't know this, but teacher to teacher, I will share with you that my class today is practicing comparing adjectives. What does that look like? So I would like to get a real task, high motivation. I want to have an eye on language. I'm a language teacher, okay? I'm not the history professor. I'm not the boss at the new job. This is a language class, and I want to get people writing. So here's what we will be doing. So this grammar point, another one of my textbooks called The Grammar Answer Key. I'll explain those 2 books at the end of the session today, but here's my lesson, which the students have already studied. In English, sometimes adjectives take ER, sometimes they take more. So which adjectives take which ones take more? Now, we have a lot of Arabic speakers today. I will tell you, as an ASL student, an Arabic as a second language student, you might think this taller, more expensive is difficult in English. Wow, no, Arabic is the winner here. How does Kabir become Akbar? How does, Tawil becomes Atwal or something? The first 2 letters switch, and then the vowel in the second syllable changes. Now, as a native speaker, you never thought about that? Oh my gosh, it's really hard. It's really hard. In English, what happens? Some small words of 1 syllable take ER, or 2 syllables with a Y, like heavy, and anything that's 3 syllables or more takes a more. Now, This is not the lesson. I've already taught this lesson. This information I can practice on the board. I can practice with the worksheet. I would tell, this is not very interesting. This is not a real task. It's not bad. It's just not an authentic task. Unless you think people are going to write about Joe, people will write about knives, and people will write about sauces. So typical worksheet, and in our textbooks we have these kind of things. This is a good first practice. So my message today is that an authentic task can be useful, yes, but just because it's not authentic doesn't make it useless, doesn't make it bad, doesn't make it boring. So I do these kinds of activities. These are very, let's go back. First, we start with things where there's no context. Then we add a little sentence, a little context. But eventually, I want to do more. There are the answers, check, 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 100. But then I ask Ahmed to write a sentence, and Ahmed can't write a correct sentence with this grammar point because he's never had to write a sentence. I think what's more important than thinking about is this authentic or not is asking yourself exactly what will students have to do. Will they have to write it or say it? If they have to write it, then practice it in writing. This is not writing. This is underlining. I don't know anybody who says, what do you want to do when you learn Arabic? I want to be able to underline Arabic. What about English? Wow, I want to be great at underlining English. Says nobody. I want to be able to speak English or write English. So today we're in a writing class. Let's try this. Give students a real reason to write. So we need something to write about, authentic language, and we need a non-lesson reason. But I'm still going to be having a grammar lesson or a vocabulary lesson under that. The students won't see the English lesson, and that's the beauty. They just are going to see the task. So everybody, here's my task. This is a smaller writing. This is writing sentences. It's not writing a paragraph. Now you might say, well, writing sentences, that's not a big deal. Oh, I disagree. You can't write a paragraph without writing sentences. You can't write an essay without writing sentences. You can't do much of anything without writing sentences. So writing sentences is a very important skill. So what are we going to write about? Well, I don't know the 129 people who are here today, but you know what I know? Everybody goes shopping, not just for clothing or cars, but groceries. So today, everybody, we're going grocery shopping. Are you a good grocery shopper? So everybody get ready. Here's what we're going to do. Now, if you are in a classroom with people, you can work in pairs. But if you're going to be by yourself, and I'm going to assume this activity we're going to do as if 30 students are all online because nobody's in a live class. So here in the United States, where I'm in Florida, in January, I will have to teach in a classroom. Some people will still be online. We have a mix. So here's an activity that works face-to-face, and it also works well online. So here's what I want you to write. You're going to write, I'm going to show you two things like this. Here's an example. I'm going to show you two products. And here I have a can of beans, and I have a can of chili. So chili is beans with some meat, it's beef, ground beef and beans cooked together with a kind of spicy sauce. It's kind of a Mexican food. Green beans in a can. So in the chat group, can you type which one is cheaper? And you're going to write, for example, if you think the green beans, you will write, I think the green beans are cheaper than the chili because, go ahead and write a sentence. So I will give you right now 20 seconds to write a sentence here. And can you tell me which ones people are voting for? I'm curious. Oh, don't go back. Sorry. I revealed the answer. Sorry. So to my host at the ELC, can you tell me which I can't see the chat group right now. What are people saying?
Okay, I can read some of the response. I think that green beans are cheaper than chili because vegetables are cheaper. I think that the green beans are cheaper than chili because the chili can contains meat, which is expensive. Okay, let me stop you right there. Now you see, people are writing not just the beans are cheaper. People are writing a longer sentence, and because now they have a reason. Because everybody wants to defend their reason, right? You have a real reason to do this. This is what, to me, this is what makes it authentic. Do people have a real reason to do this, or are they doing it because, oh my gosh, here comes Keith Folse, the teacher, I'm afraid of the teacher. Say something in English now with your partner, right? We've all done pair work where everybody's silent,
or on their cell phone. And as you walk around the room, you generate English as you move because your feet are so special. No, you generate English because, oh my gosh, they see you coming. But now, this game, people want to win. Now, here's a very important question. What if people write incorrect sentences? It's okay, because the purpose of this activity is to get people to write. This is about getting people get excited and they start writing. You know, let me give this example. I teach tennis. Everybody know, if you played a little tennis, forehand, backhand. What's the hard shot for most people? The backhand. People come and say, Keith, can you help me have a better backhand? And my answer always is, I can't help you have a better backhand if you have no backhand. You need a bad backhand first before I can make it better, all right? So having said that, all right, how can I help you get a better backhand? You have to have a bad one first. So here's the answer to this one. So you can do this, but the beans were 50 cents and the chili was $1.23. You can see the chili with beans was a lot more expensive. But whatever you wrote is correct. The answer is correct, because my goal is for you to get this, to get you to write more, all right? Now, I also teach Spanish. So I can tell you that you can, so some of you, to my host also, if anybody wants to start writing in Spanish, take a photo of this screen with your cell phone. Creo is, the word credible, incredible. That cre means believe. I believe that something is más barata que means what, then whatever. So there you go. You can do this in Spanish very easily. I do this in language classes all the time. I wish I had a German instructor. I wish my German instructor did this with me, but I don't have a German instructor. I'm in a 100% online class. All right, this PowerPoint, by the way, I'm able to share with you. It takes a lot of work to find these products from the supermarket and put them in there one by one. Let's try another one here, okay? Ready? That was the practice. Now, we're going to do 3 or 4 examples really quickly here. Number 1, everybody ready? Ready, set, and go. A box of spaghetti or salsa. Salsa is tomatoes with green peppers with onions in a jar. So sometimes people use the tortillas or some Mexican or like chips, and they put the chips in the salsa. Which one is cheaper? So to my host, let me ask you this. Which one do you think is cheaper? What do you think is cheaper?
I would guess the spaghetti is cheaper just because it doesn't have so many ingredients.
Okay, so I believe the spaghetti is cheaper. I think the spaghetti is cheaper because it doesn't have so many ingredients. Now, when you said it doesn't have so many ingredients, we know that's a very difficult sentence for ESL students. Many or much, so or very, ingredient with an S or no S. And then for an Arabic speaker, how do I spell ingredient? And I'll go back one and say, oh, my German class, I don't know the German word for ingredient. So I can say, das spaghetti is mehr, whatever, cheaper than the salsa because, oh my gosh. And now I have a real need for the word ingredient. And that is a really important motivate for me. I love it. How do you say ingredient? And I find myself say, was bedeutet ingredient? I mean, I find myself even speaking some broken German without a teacher. So, all right. So what are people saying?
People are saying salsa is more expensive, spaghetti is cheaper, and en España, barilla spaghettía.
En español, muy bien, muy bien. Okay, what's the answer? The answer is?
Es más barata que salsa porque tiene solo un ingredients.
Muy bueno tu español, muy bueno. Te felicito. Congratulations here. So the salsa is more expensive. Salsa was $1.98 and the spaghetti was $1.14. Let's try another one. Number 2, everybody ready? Here we go. We have 2 very different things. We have some dish soap. So Dawn is the company. And then we have some creamy peanut butter. Now, I don't know, in Bahrain, do people eat peanut butter?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I asked because in Latin America, my Latin American friends in general hate peanut butter. So what is this thing? You take a peanut and you crush it and you put it with oil and you eat that? Yes, and we love it, okay? So what are people saying in the chat group?
They're saying, yes, it's yummy with honey.
Okay.
Also,
so
they're saying dish soap is cheaper than peanut butter.
The soap is cheaper. Interesting. Does anyone think the peanut butter is cheaper?
They're still commenting.
Okay.
Me gusto peanut butter.
Okay. Yeah, me gusta, me gusta.
More
It's
expensive.
peanut butter.
Another one said the soap is more expensive. I think the peanut butter is cheaper because the brand is inexpensive.
Okay. Let me say this. Now, you know, everybody's writing cheaper. One person wrote expensive. Now, you notice this activity, I'm the teacher. I could have chosen which is cheaper, or I could have chosen which is more expensive. But for this activity, I intentionally am using the word cheaper. I'm using the not the more. Why? Because is more difficult. Because every language I've studied, including Arabic, there is a word for more. And in Spanish, you can say cheap, more cheap. I'll teach you Spanish, everybody. Cheap, more cheap. Good, more good. Heavy, more heavy. Difficult, more difficult. In Spanish, all the words use more. French, all the words use more. German, I have no idea. That's not in German 1, that's in German 2. Next semester, okay? But the point is, in English, the more is the easier of the two. The is the hard one. People know as a person, teacher, writer, driver. Why would they think can go with adjectives? That's the difficult one. So I want to practice I don't want to practice more, right? I hear all the time, oh, teacher, this lesson is more difficult from last week from Arabic speakers, right? All right, so the answer survey said, the dish soap, so the peanut butter is cheaper. So if you got this one correct, congratulations. Let's try one more. I know we're short on time. We'll do one more here, okay? Number 3, this is your last chance to get it right, everybody. Last chance. Winner take all. So we have a pizza. We have an extra large brick oven pizza ready to put in the oven and go. Or we have a jar, a bottle of vitamins. The vitamins for children. So these are the Flintstones children's called gummies because it's kind of like gum. So you have 60 vitamins or 1 pizza. What do you think? I'll give you 20 seconds to write a sentence here.
One person says, I think pizza is cheaper than Flintstones gummies. Another says, gummies son más baratos que pizza.
Okay.
Pizza is more cheaper than gummies.
Okay.
Children's gummies are more expensive than pizza. Vitamins are always more expensive.
Okay, there's a reason. Someone said vitamins are always. So the other people, when I see them coming in and they say the pizza is cheaper than the vitamins, I would say, why? Why? You have to give a reason. If you don't put a reason, because something. So I think it's kind of split there, right? I see both answers, right? So
yes,
teacher, you want to choose. You know, the beginning one about the beans and the chili, that was the example for a reason. Because it's easy. It really is easier because one has meat, one has no meat. And actually the can was bigger than the other. And it was a brand, and this was not a brand. The point is there are lots of reasons. I want everybody to get the example correct. People, oh my gosh, this is so cool, I'm gonna win. No, you're not gonna win. I'm gonna give you some things like vitamins and pizza, which are not connected. So the answer is, believe me.
Pizza is cheaper than vitamins because pizza is a one-time consumption. I think that's
consumption. Somebody's advanced. All right, here's the answer. Survey said the vitamins were cheaper. So the pizza was more expensive. So the vitamins were cheaper, pizza was more expensive. Now I have one more which I'm not going to do today, the popcorn or the cheese, and the answer here is that the popcorn was a little bit cheaper. I'm a popcorn fanatic, so that's my favorite snack. Not peanut butter, popcorn. But I'm going to stop today. Are you a good shopper? I hope you saw this was an authentic task. It's about writing. The first book I talked about was called The Grammar Answer Key. This PowerPoint I'll be happy to share with the English Language Center, and you can share with other people there. So that's one possibility. You can order that from the University of Michigan. And the other one, I'll stop with this slide today. The activity about the gumbo and the writing the definition paragraph is a book from National Geographic Learning that Mr. Hakan can help you get a copy of that if you don't have that. And I think you guys at UOB are using that one already, perhaps. That book has what, 125 paragraphs in it. It's a lot of examples. When I use it, I can't teach them all. I don't try to teach them all, right? But if you need extra help, it's there as well. I'm a little bit over time. If anybody has some questions they want to ask, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, all right?
We do have one question.
Sure.
You mentioned that authentic tasks can be frustrating. How can we encourage students to take risks, to expand their comfort zone and stretch themselves, especially through some of the activities that you presented?
Okay, sorry, I had trouble here. The question I think you said was about how can we encourage students to take a risk? Is that correct? All right, well, here's one. When your students write a sentence, let's suppose that the pizza activity, well, I call it the pizza, the peanut butter activity, what we just did about the shopping game. Suppose you had the shopping game as homework where they had the 10 sentences or 5 sentences, and each student needed to write the 5 sentences. So yes, in my German class, I want to go beyond the textbook, right? Take a chance. I'm not sure if it's a der, die, or das. This, give you a good example. On the test, when we have a test, we've had 3 exams so far, we have to write sentences. And the last one was write about your family. And I said, I'm gonna write about my brother. And I thought, oh my gosh, the word for nice, it's net. Is it with 2 T's or 1 T? I couldn't remember, so I thought, you know what? I'm not gonna use the word nice because I'm gonna say my brother is tall. I know the word for tall. So how do you do that? Well, my teacher, now we know, spelling doesn't count on the test. So in your activities, if you want people to take a chance, one thing you can do is they write a paragraph or they write sentences. I always tell my students, it depends on the activity, I may not read and grade everything. I will tell you, teacher, I'm not reading everything. I'm not grading everything. You learn to write by writing. But I will tell my students, if you want me to check one thing on your paper, and short paper, underline it. So the homework for tomorrow could be write a paragraph about the weather, about your car, whatever it is, and I want you to underline one thing, one sentence, one part, one phrase that you want me to teach, to teach, not just grade, but teach. And I promise you, I will give you feedback. I will write a sentence about that underlined part. That allows me to do more focused grading, and students will take a risk because you cannot lose points for that. It's just because that's what you're doing. It's designed to take a risk. It also makes my grading easier. I pick up 30 papers. I only have to read not 30 paragraphs, but 30 underlined parts.
Yes, that's an excellent idea. The idea of focused correction areas really gives some great freedom because the idea is, especially in a level 1 or a level 2,
yes,
they're going to make mistakes. The mistakes
yes,
help us understand their level. So
yes,
another question, how can we encourage students to avoid using translate for everything they write?
Okay, so it's I'll tell you from my German class right now. So how do I learn German? Hey, can you do me a favor in the chat? Can you write this phrase in the chat for me? So even if you don't speak German, watch these videos. It's called German with Anja. Anja is a capital A-N-J-A. You go to YouTube and look at German with Anja. It's called Learn German with Anja. I'm sorry, Learn German with Anja. And so she does translations sometimes. Translations are not your enemy. What is your enemy is the translator. So because the students who are lazy will just translate everything and give you that paper. That's the problem. Now, if your students aren't serious, they're not serious. That people are going to do what they want to do. But I will say this: I'm a serious German student, and I use Google Translate this way. So the word is excellent. Okay, whatever the word for excellent is, okay? Or the word for conversation, Konversation. It looks like English is why I remember. So so in German, do you say have a conversation or make a conversation? Or do a conversation? What do you say? I don't know. So I will think in English, I want to have a conversation with you. In German, I want with you a conversation to have. The words are all, so I think in my head, that's how I do it. Then I'll write it in German, bad German, mistakes with the der, die, das. Then I go to Google Translate. I put in one side in English, and then I see what it looks like in German because I don't have a German teacher, and I really, really, really want to improve. So every day I try to take 3 sentences. I mean, I'm very strategic with this. Google Translate can be your enemy if you are lazy. Keslan from Arabic, I remember that word, okay? If you are Keslan, you're always going to be Keslan, and your English will never improve. And that's not a Keith Folse problem. It really isn't. I speak English already. You guys are bilingual already. If the student doesn't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink, right? I'm doing all of this for you. I tell my students about Google Translate. I tell them some smart ways to improve your English using Google Translate. And I talk about, I will never know. I probably will know if you translate it with Google Translate, because your English is not that good yet. But you're not hurting me. Now, some students will not, they don't care about that, but there are many students who care. And I'm not changing my class for the 10% who are lazy. I'm aiming for the people who want to be there, who want to improve. So.
Well, and you raise an important issue. There are ways, using one word is much different than trying to translate a whole paragraph. No, and again, with the tenses and different types of things. So that's an excellent point. Thank you so much for a very, very thought-provoking, very amazing presentation. You've certainly given us a lot to think about at the end of a busy day, and we really appreciate your insights.
Thanks. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.